Boy draws lost cathedrals from memory. Then historians find a real match. Asterisk. When 6-year-old Thomas Hartwell first picked up a pencil and began sketching the intricate details of Gothic cathedrals with architectural precision that would challenge seasoned draftsmen, his parents assumed he had inherited some latent artistic gene. But when their son began drawing cathedrals that didn't exist, soaring spires, elaborate rose windows, and flying buttresses arranged in combinations that seemed to defy architectural logic, Rebecca and Michael Hartwell realized they were witnessing something far more mysterious. The boy had never been inside a cathedral, had never seen architectural drawings, and lived in suburban Denver, where the tallest building was a modest office tower. Yet here he was, creating detailed floor plans, elevation drawings, and intricate stonework patterns with the confidence of someone who had spent years studying medieval architecture. When Thomas began labeling his drawings in Latin script he couldn't read, signing them Frater Augustinus, Anno Domini 1387, the family knew they were confronting a puzzle that would lead them into the hidden corners of European history and challenge everything they thought they knew about memory, identity, and the mysterious ways the past can echo through time. Asterisk. If stories that blur the line between impossible and undeniable fascinate you, make sure to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. You're about to witness something that will change how you think about what children can truly remember. Part 1. The INC deemed the morning of September 12, 2023, began like any other in the Hartwell household in suburban Denver, Colorado. Rebecca was preparing breakfast while her husband Michael got ready for his job at the engineering firm downtown. 6-year-old Thomas sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by his usual collection of crayons and drawing paper, creating the typical colorful chaos that defined most first-grader artwork. But on this particular morning, something was different. Thomas pushed aside his familiar art supplies and reached for one of Michael's mechanical pencils that had been left on the table from the previous evening's work. With movements that seemed too deliberate for a 6-year-old, he began to draw, with a precision that made Rebecca pause in her morning routine. "Tommy, sweetie, that's Daddy's work pencil," she said gently, noticing the focused intensity in her son's expression. Thomas looked up with eyes that seemed older than his years. "I need it for the church drawings," he said, his voice carrying an unusual formality. "The measurements have to be exact, or the stones won't fit properly." What emerged on the paper over the next hour defied everything Rebecca thought she knew about childhood development. Thomas wasn't creating the stick-figure churches typical of young children. Instead, he was drafting architectural plans with sophisticated understanding of perspective, proportion, and structural engineering principles. The drawing showed a cathedral. From multiple angles, a bird's-eye view of the floor plan, a side elevation revealing the height of the nave and transepts, and detailed sketches of individual architectural elements. Gothic arches were drawn with mathematical precision. Flying buttresses were positioned with structural logic, and rose windows were designed with geometric complexity that would challenge art students. "Where did you learn to draw like this?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the scriptorium," Thomas replied matter-of-factly, never looking up from his work. "Brother Marcus taught me the proper way to draw the plans before we begin construction. Every stone must be measured, every arch calculated, or the whole structure will collapse." Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Thomas had never heard the word scriptorium before, and his pronunciation was perfect, with the careful enunciation of someone familiar with Latin terminology. Moreover, his understanding of structural engineering principles was impossible for a child who had never been exposed to such concepts. As Thomas continued working, he began to mutter in what sounded like Latin, though Rebecca couldn't be certain. The words flowed naturally, as if he were conversing with invisible companions about technical details of cathedral construction. Fundamentum solidum requiretur, he said, his small hand sketching foundation details with architectural accuracy. The foundation must be solid, or the weight of the vaulting will crack the walls. When Michael returned from work that evening, Rebecca showed him Thomas's drawing. His engineering background made him immediately recognize the sophistication of the architectural plans his 6-year-old son had created. "This is impossible," Michael said, studying the precise calculations of load-bearing walls and the accurate representation of Gothic structural elements. "These drawings show understanding of concepts I didn't learn until graduate school." Where did he get this knowledge? The family spent that evening in quiet observation as Thomas continued his architectural work. He drew with the confidence of someone who had designed and built cathedrals, adding details that revealed intimate knowledge of medieval construction techniques, stone carving methods, and the complex logistics of cathedral building. Most unsettling was the emotional connection Thomas displayed to his work. He would pause occasionally to study his drawings with the pride of someone viewing a beloved creation, and he would speak of the buildings as if they were real places he had known and loved. "This is my favorite cathedral," he said, pointing to one of his more elaborate drawings. "The light comes through the rose window in the morning and makes patterns on the floor. The choir sounds beautiful when they sing the morning prayers." Rebecca and Michael exchanged worried glances. Their son wasn't just drawing architectural plans. He was describing experiences and emotions connected to buildings that existed only on paper. The incident marked the beginning of a mystery that would consume their family and challenge their understanding of what their child truly knew about a world that had existed centuries before his birth. Part 2. ESCALATION. Over the following weeks, Thomas's architectural episodes became the dominant feature of the Hartwell household. What had begun as a single morning of unusual drawing evolved into daily sessions where their son would spend hours creating increasingly complex and detailed cathedral designs. The drawings multiplied rapidly, filling notebook after notebook with architectural plans that would have challenged professional draftsmen. Thomas worked with the methodical precision of someone following established protocols, creating floor plans, elevation drawings, and detailed specifications for everything from foundation work to roof construction. Most remarkably, Thomas began to organize his work according to what appeared to be specific projects. He would label his drawings with names like Ecclesia Sancti Petri, Basilica Beta Maria, and Cathedral Sancti Stephani, writing in Latin script that he claimed he couldn't read but executed with perfect medieval calligraphy. "I don't know what these words mean," Thomas told his parents when they asked about the Latin inscriptions, "but my hand knows how to write them. Brother Augustinus taught me the proper way to form the letters." The reference to Brother Augustinus became a recurring element in Thomas's architectural sessions. He would speak of this figure as if describing a beloved teacher, someone who had provided guidance on everything from design principles to construction techniques. Brother Augustinus says the nave must be exactly 72 feet in length. Thomas would explain, his 6-year-old voice carrying the authority of someone quoting respected expertise. "That's the sacred proportion that ensures the building will resonate with divine harmony." Rebecca began documenting these sessions, filling journals with transcriptions of Thomas's technical explanations and architectural observations. The level of detail was staggering. He spoke of specific types of stone, the proper mixing of mortar, the seasonal timing of construction projects, and the complex logistics of coordinating hundreds of craftsmen. The escalation reached a concerning level when Thomas began to exhibit emotional distress related to his architectural work. He would cry over drawings that showed structural damage, would become agitated when discussing incomplete projects, and would display genuine grief when speaking of cathedrals that had been destroyed. The cathedral at Bellefontaine was never finished, he told his parents one evening, tears streaming down his face. The foundation cracked during the winter of 1389, and we had to abandon the project. All those years of work, all those beautiful stones wasted. The family's routines began to revolve around Thomas's architectural schedule. He would insist on working by candlelight in the evenings, claiming that oil lamps provided better illumination for detailed drawing. He would refuse to use modern art supplies, preferring simple pencils and paper that resembled the materials he claimed to have used in the scriptorium. Most disturbing was how Thomas's personality seemed to shift during these sessions. The playful, energetic first grader would become quiet and contemplative, his movements deliberate and adult-like. He would speak with the measured cadence of someone accustomed to scholarly discourse, using vocabulary that seemed far beyond his chronological age. "The transept requires additional buttressing," he would say, his voice taking on the tone of someone addressing architectural concerns. "The lateral forces from the vaulting will stress the walls beyond their capacity. We must add flying buttresses here and here to distribute the load properly." Michael, with his engineering background, began to analyze Thomas's technical explanations and found them consistently accurate. The boy's understanding of structural mechanics, load distribution, and construction physics was sophisticated beyond anything that should be possible for a 6-year-old. By October 2023, Thomas had produced over 50 detailed architectural drawings, each one more complex than the last. The collection represented a comprehensive library of medieval cathedral design, complete with construction specifications, artistic details, and practical considerations that revealed intimate knowledge of 14th century building techniques. Family realized they were witnessing something that transcended normal childhood development. Thomas wasn't just creating imaginative drawings. He was accessing knowledge and skills that belonged to someone who had lived and worked as a master. Cathedral architect centuries before his birth. Part 3. The Einvesteigen faced with their son's inexplicable architectural knowledge. Rebecca and Michael began researching the historical accuracy of the details Thomas had been incorporating into his cathedral designs. They started by consulting architectural history books, hoping to understand the source of his sophisticated understanding of Gothic construction principles. Rebecca's first breakthrough came when she discovered that Thomas's technical vocabulary was remarkably authentic to medieval architectural practice. Terms like clerestory, triforium, and ambulatory were used correctly and in proper historical context. His understanding of proportion systems, structural engineering, and decoration schemes aligned perfectly with documented practices from the 14th century. Michael approached the investigation from his engineering perspective, analyzing the structural soundness of Thomas's designs. He was amazed to discover that the boy's architectural plans were not only historically accurate, but also structurally viable. The load calculations were correct, the buttressing systems were properly designed, and the foundation specifications would actually support the massive stone structures depicted in the drawings. The investigation took on new urgency when Rebecca noticed that Thomas's drawings included specific architectural details that weren't commonly known outside of specialized academic circles. He depicted unique stone cutting techniques, specific types of mortar composition, and construction methods that were only documented in scholarly research about medieval building practices. Dr. Catherine Morrison, a professor of medieval architecture at the University of Colorado, agreed to examine Thomas's work after Rebecca contacted her through the university's public outreach program. Dr. Morrison's initial response was skeptical, but when she reviewed the collection of drawings, her tone shifted dramatically. "These aren't the work of a child," Dr. Morrison said during their phone consultation. "The technical accuracy, the understanding of Gothic structural principles, the authentic use of medieval architectural vocabulary, this represents knowledge that typically requires years of specialized study." Dr. Morrison arranged to meet with the family on November 8th 2023, bringing with her a collection of historical documents, architectural plans, and scholarly resources related to medieval cathedral construction. She was particularly interested in the Latin inscriptions Thomas had been incorporating into his work. The meeting revealed the most startling aspect of Thomas's architectural knowledge. When Dr. Morrison showed him photographs of actual medieval cathedrals, Thomas would immediately identify structural elements, construction techniques, and design principles with the confidence of someone who had studied the buildings extensively. "That's Chartres," he said, pointing to a photograph of the famous cathedral. But they changed the western facade in the 13th century. The original design had twin towers, but they never finished the northern one properly. Dr. Morrison confirmed that Thomas's observation was accurate and reflected detailed knowledge of the cathedral's construction history that wouldn't be found in general architecture books. The breakthrough in their investigation came when Dr. Morrison decided to research the specific names Thomas had been using in his Latin inscriptions. The name Frater Augustinus appeared consistently in his drawings, always associated with the date Anno Domini 1387. Working with colleagues at European universities, Dr. Morrison began searching medieval archives for any historical record of a monk or architect named Augustinus, who had been active in cathedral construction during the late 14th century. The discovery that changed everything came from the Archives Départementales de la Côte d'Or in Dijon, France. Among the records of the Benedictine monastery of Saint Benin was a document dated 1387 that referenced Frater Augustinus, Magister Architectus, Brother Augustinus, Master Architect, in connection with cathedral construction projects in the region. Further research revealed that Brother Augustinus had been a Benedictine monk who specialized in architectural design and had supervised the construction of several cathedral projects in Burgundy during the late 14th century. Church records indicated that he had been known for his innovative structural techniques and his ability to solve complex engineering problems. Most remarkably, the historical Augustinus had been working on a cathedral project in the town of Bellefontaine, same location Thomas had mentioned when describing an abandoned construction project. Medieval records confirmed that the Bellefontaine Cathedral had indeed been abandoned in 1389 due to foundation problems, exactly as Thomas had described. The investigation had revealed that Thomas's architectural knowledge wasn't just historically accurate, it was connected to specific individuals and projects that had existed over 600 years ago. The 6-year-old appeared to possess the memories and expertise of a medieval master architect whose work had been documented in European archives, but was unknown to modern scholars until this investigation began. Part 4. The BRE most stunning validation of Thomas's architectural memories came when Dr. Morrison made a discovery that would fundamentally challenge everything the academic community thought they knew about medieval cathedral construction. While researching Brother Augustinus in the archives of the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, she found a collection of original architectural drawings that had been attributed to the historical monk. The drawings, preserved in a medieval manuscript titled Liber Architecturae Sacrae, Book of Sacred Architecture, had been created around 1387 and showed detailed plans for several cathedral projects. When Dr. Morrison compared these historical drawings with Thomas's contemporary work, the similarities were so striking that she initially suspected some form of reproduction or copying. But deeper analysis revealed something even more extraordinary. Thomas's drawings didn't just resemble Brother Augustinus's work, they appeared to be continuations of unfinished projects. Where the historical architect had left preliminary sketches, Thomas had provided completed designs. Where ancient plans showed structural problems, Thomas had drawn solutions that reflected advanced understanding of the engineering challenges. Dr. Morrison contacted Dr. Jean-Pierre Dubois, a specialist in medieval manuscripts at the Sorbonne, who had been studying Brother Augustinus's architectural work for over a decade. Dr. Dubois agreed to participate in a video conference with the Hartwell family, bringing with him digital copies of the original manuscripts. The conversation that followed was both remarkable and emotionally overwhelming. When Dr. Dubois showed Thomas photographs of Brother Augustinus's original drawings, the boy's reaction was immediate and profound. "Those are my plans," Thomas said, his voice taking on the formal tone that accompanied his architectural sessions. "But they're not finished. I was working on the rose window design when the illness came. I never got to complete the western facade." Dr. Dubois was stunned by Thomas's response. The historical records did indicate that Brother Augustinus had died in 1390, leaving several cathedral projects unfinished. The illness, Thomas referenced, aligned with monastery records that described a plague outbreak that had claimed the lives of several monks, including the master architect. The breakthrough reached its climax when Dr. Dubois showed Thomas a specific drawing from the historical collection, a preliminary sketch for a cathedral rose window that Brother Augustinus had left incomplete. Thomas studied the image intently, then reached for his pencil. "I remember this one," he said, his small hand moving with confident precision. The geometry was challenging because the patron wanted 7 sections instead of the traditional 12. "I worked out the proportions, but I never got to finish the final design." Over the next 2 hours, Thomas created a drawing that perfectly completed the historical architect's unfinished work. The geometric calculations were mathematically sound, the artistic elements were consistent with 14th century style, and the structural engineering reflected sophisticated understanding of how stained glass windows were supported in Gothic cathedrals. Dr. Dubois was astonished by the continuity between the historical and contemporary work. The artistic vision, the technical approach, the problem-solving methodology. It's as if Brother Augustinus had returned to finish what he started 600 years ago. The most compelling evidence came when Thomas began to correct errors in the historical documentation. Modern scholars had misinterpreted certain aspects of Brother Augustinus's structural innovations, but Thomas provided explanations that clarified the original architect's intentions. "The buttressing system looks wrong in the modern drawings," Thomas explained, his voice carrying the authority of someone defending their own work. "The stones were supposed to be cut at a 15-degree angle, not 20. That's why the calculations seem incorrect in the academic papers." Dr. Morrison and Dr. Dubois spent the following weeks verifying Thomas's corrections against the original medieval manuscripts. In every case, the boy's explanations proved accurate, revealing that modern scholars had indeed misunderstood key aspects of Brother Augustinus's architectural innovations. The breakthrough had provided undeniable evidence that Thomas possessed not just historical knowledge about medieval architecture, but the actual creative vision and problem-solving abilities of Brother Augustinus himself. The 6-year-old was apparently continuing architectural work that had been interrupted by death over 6 centuries ago. Part 5, the CUNFRUNTAIO in the story of Thomas Hartwell, gained international attention when Dr. Morrison presented the case at the International Medieval Studies Conference in December 2023. The presentation, titled Architectural Continuity Across Time, Evidence of Historical Memory in Contemporary Child, sparked immediate controversy and attracted skeptics from multiple disciplines. Dr. William Harrison, a prominent child psychologist from Harvard University, publicly challenged the findings in a series of academic papers and media appearances. "We're being asked to accept that a 6-year-old has access to the memories of a medieval monk," he argued. "The more reasonable explanation is that the child has been exposed to architectural information through modern sources and is unconsciously creating derivative work." The confrontation intensified when Dr. Harrison arrived in Denver with a team of specialists to conduct what he called rigorous scientific testing of Thomas's abilities. The team included Dr. Sarah Chun, an expert in child development, and Dr. Robert Martinez, a specialist in false memory formation. The investigation took place at the Hartwell home on January 15, 2024, with cameras rolling to document the encounter. Dr. Harrison approached the meeting with obvious skepticism, immediately questioning the methodology of the previous research and the possibility of contamination in Thomas's environment. Children are remarkably susceptible to suggestion, Dr. Harrison explained to the family. They can absorb information from books, internet sources, television programs, and adult conversations, then reconstruct this material in ways that appear to demonstrate impossible knowledge. The skeptical team began by examining the Hartwell home for possible sources of architectural information. They searched through books, internet browsing histories, and family possessions, looking for any material that could explain Thomas's sophisticated understanding of medieval cathedral construction. Their investigation revealed minimal exposure to architectural content. The family owned no books on medieval architecture. Their internet usage showed no related searches, and their cultural background provided no connection to European architectural traditions. Dr. Chun then tested Thomas's knowledge using a technique designed to identify learned versus intuitive understanding. She presented him with a series of architectural challenges that required not just memorized information, but creative problem-solving abilities. Thomas's responses impressed even the skeptical team. When asked to design a buttressing system for a hypothetical cathedral with unusual proportions, he created a solution that Dr. Morrison later confirmed was both historically appropriate and structurally sound. The boy isn't just recalling memorized information, Dr. Chun noted. He's demonstrating genuine understanding of engineering principles and creative problem-solving abilities that are consistent with professional architectural training. The confrontation reached its emotional climax when Dr. Harrison challenged Thomas directly about the reality of his memories. Thomas, you need to understand that Brother Augustinus lived over 600 years ago. You cannot possibly remember being that person. Thomas's response was immediate and heartbreaking. He began to cry, not with the simple upset of a corrected child, but with the profound grief of someone confronting the reality of their own death. I know he's gone, Thomas said through his tears. I know I died before I could finish the cathedrals. But the buildings are still there in my mind, still waiting to be completed. The stones remember, even when the body doesn't. The intensity of Thomas's emotional response affected everyone present. Dr. Martinez, who had remained professionally detached throughout the investigation, found himself moved by the child's obvious distress. This level of emotional authenticity is extremely difficult to fabricate, he admitted. The child's grief appears genuine, and his technical knowledge is undeniable. While I cannot accept supernatural explanations, I must acknowledge that conventional theories don't adequately explain what we're observing. The confrontation concluded with Dr. Harrison's grudging admission that the case defied easy explanation. We came here expecting to find evidence of contamination or suggestion, he said in his final statement. While we maintain our skepticism about claims of reincarnation, we must acknowledge that Thomas's abilities present genuine anomalies that challenge our understanding of childhood development. The confrontation had failed to provide the definitive debunking that skeptics had hoped for, leaving the scientific community more divided than ever about the nature of Thomas's extraordinary architectural knowledge. Part 6. The After Mat Today. Thomas Hartwell is 9 years old, a thoughtful third grader who has learned to balance his extraordinary architectural abilities with the normal activities of childhood. The intense episodes of accessing Brother Augustinus's memories have evolved into a more manageable relationship with his unusual gift, though the technical knowledge and creative vision remain as remarkable as ever. Rebecca reports that Thomas's medieval sessions have become less frequent, but more purposeful. He seems to work on the architectural drawings when he feels there's something important to complete, she explains. It's as if he's fulfilling a responsibility to finish what Brother Augustinus started. The family has worked with child psychologists to help Thomas develop healthy boundaries around his architectural experiences. He has learned to distinguish between his contemporary identity and the memories that seem to come from Brother Augustinus, developing coping strategies for the emotional weight that sometimes accompanies his connection to the past. Dr. Morrison continues to document Thomas's architectural development, noting that his technical skills have continued to advance at a rate that defies conventional understanding. Thomas is demonstrating abilities that typically require decades of specialized training, she wrote in her 2024 follow-up study. His intuitive understanding of structural engineering, historical construction techniques, and artistic design suggests access to knowledge that transcends normal educational processes. The international architectural community has embraced Thomas's case as a unique window into medieval construction practices. The Cathedral Studies Institute in Paris has acquired several of his drawings, displaying them alongside Brother Augustinus's original work in a permanent exhibition titled Architectural Memory. When past and present converge, Thomas himself has developed a mature understanding of his unusual abilities. He speaks of Brother Augustinus as if discussing a teacher or mentor, someone whose knowledge and expertise he can access, but who remains a distinct historical figure. Brother Augustinus was a good architect, Thomas told researchers during a recent interview. He loved building cathedrals because they brought people closer to God. I'm glad I can help finish his work. The child has retained his connection to medieval culture and Latin language, often surprising his teachers with his knowledge of historical details and his ability to read and write in medieval script. His contemporary artwork has expanded beyond architectural drawings to include original designs that blend historical techniques with modern sensibilities. Last year, the family traveled to France, visiting several locations where Brother Augustinus had worked on cathedral projects. Thomas's reactions to the historical sites were complex, he recognized architectural elements with the familiarity of someone who had designed them. But he also found peace in seeing how the buildings had been completed by later architects. They finished the cathedral at Dijon, he observed as they stood in the medieval structure. It's different from what I planned, but it's still beautiful. Brother Augustinus would be proud to see how his work was continued. The scientific community continues to study Thomas's case, with researchers from multiple disciplines attempting to understand the nature of his architectural memories. The Institute for Consciousness Studies has documented his case alongside similar instances of children, displaying impossible historical knowledge. Other families have reached out to share their own experiences with children who demonstrate extraordinary abilities that seem to transcend normal development. The Hartwell family has become part of a support network for parents navigating similar mysteries, offering guidance and understanding to those whose children display inexplicable talents. Rebecca and Michael have learned to embrace the wonder of their son's abilities while maintaining focus on his normal childhood development. They've created a studio space where Thomas can pursue his architectural interests without the pressure of academic analysis or public scrutiny. We've stopped trying to explain why this is happening, Rebecca reflects. Instead, we focus on helping Thomas use his gift in ways that honor both his contemporary identity and his connection to the past. Whether it's reincarnation, genetic memory, or some other phenomenon, the important thing is that he's using his abilities to create beauty and preserve historical knowledge. Thomas continues to grow and develop as both a normal child and an extraordinary architect. His story has become a bridge between past and present, carrying forward the creative vision of a medieval master builder whose work was interrupted by death, but continues through the hands of a child who never knew his name it somehow remembers. His dreams, his architectural drawings remain a testament to the enduring nature of human creativity and the mysterious ways that knowledge can transcend the boundaries of individual lifetimes, waiting in the depths of consciousness for the right moment to resurface and continue the work that was left unfinished. Perhaps the most profound aspect of Thomas's story isn't the mystery of how he accesses a medieval architect's memories, but the possibility that human creativity itself might be immortal, that the drive to build, to create, to leave beauty in the world runs so deep in our consciousness that it can leap across centuries, waiting patiently for new hands to pick up the tools and continue the sacred work of turning stone into prayer.